Chapter 6 Heartbreak Habits. The letters kept coming, never stopping. Each admiration was paired with a piece of advice of a compliment, like 12. How you get huffy when you're wrong, lighten up. Or 8. How you stare at birds when you're lonely, just ask for company sometime. Tom had begun collecting them in a pastel blue star-patterned shoebox that Todd generously donated. The whole thing was what Todd had suggested. Keep them as a memento, maybe one of the keepsakes you'll have left of your admirer. Tom nudged the box under his bed with the toe of his shoe. Todd was slumped by his window, folding sticks of gum into his mouth and whimsically blowing large neon pink bubbles. His cherry blossom crown was tilted sideways. Gravity was the only thing balancing it on Todd's head. Tom was sidetracked. He let his gaze fall onto a nearby sparrow, hopping silently from the branches of the tree separating both houses. Hey! Tom fell out his trance, drowsily blinking at the suddenly noisy Norwegian. What? You weren't listening, were you? I was. Liar. I saw you watching that bird. Tom guiltily looked down at his lap, absent-mindedly twiddling his thumbs. Todd cleared his throat. What I was like? Announcing was the fact my tutor is wanting me to choose a career course, and I've chosen 2, so I need your help deciding. Hit me. Astrologist or therapist? Therapy? I didn't know you were in that. I just like the thought of helping troubled kids. Well, astrology seems to be your calling. Todd nodded in agreement before picking up his mug, a small porcelain mint green mug, with small white dots patterned in vertical lines. Wisps of steam poured over the edges and spiraled into the air. Tom nuzzled into his scarf as Todd cautiously blew into the cup, watching the white swirls. Todd looked at Tom hopefully. Would you like some? What even is it? Hot chocolate. I still have, a lot more. Tom nodded as Todd held out his steaming cup of hot chocolate. Tom accepted it and carefully brought it up to his lips. The sweetness of it was almost sickly. Obviously, Todd would have loved it. He seemed to have a strict diet of sugary foods, snacks, and candy. Nonetheless, Tom continued to sip the rich beverage as he redirected to the subject of a bucket list. So, a bucket list. Ah, how foolish of me to forget. Todd peeled a yellow flower-shaped sticky note from a stack and retrieved a pink pen with a fluffy feather topper from his desk. He jotted a quick title and continued to bullet point their first quest, second, and then finally all 10. Tom plus Todd's bucket list. 1. First kiss. 2. Get drunk. 3. Waltz with somebody in the rain. 4. First heartbreak. 5. Visit the stars. 6. Get married or propose. 7. Fall in love. 8. Adopt a pet. 9. Raise a tree sapling. 10. Change someone's life. Todd threw his pen back into its metal pot before spitting out his gum. We have our finalized list. How many of these do you think will get done? I think I could, complete them all this year. Todd jutted his jaw out matter-of-factly, his flower crown falling into his line of vision. Tom snorted and jabbed a finger into the air near Todd. You think you can fall in love, get married, and have a heartbreak this year? I do. It's October. Well, then, let's start the things we can accomplish together. Tom handed back the cup and crossed his legs. Todd adjusted his flower crown and whistled like a cartoon bird. Let's see. Things to do together. We can adopt a pet. Todd snapped his fingers and smiled a 100-watt smile. He scanned his surroundings and made a tutting noise. Tom looked painfully confused. What are you doing? Finding that stray cat. The one that made us meet? Yes! After a few minutes of tutting and kissing noises, the midnight black cat finally hopped onto the ochre branch of the large chestnut tree. Todd beckoned it with his finger, almost hypnotically drawing it in. She curled onto his lap, raking her sharp claws over his shorts a few times. Isn't she, beautiful kitty boy? I suppose. Do you have, a name in mind? Definitely! At the same time, Todd and Tom unfolded their fingers in a countdown motion. Once, 1-1, the boys both blurted out their chosen names. Shoodle! Star! Silence, then laughter. The merry laughter of two boys enjoying the bittersweet sharing process. Todd cut his chuckles so he could gently peck the cat's ear. Her name is Star. Well, I'm calling her Shadow. Star doesn't, appreciate your tone. Well, Shadow doesn't appreciate your kisses. Todd's hand flew to his chest as if he had been tragically offended. His mismatched eyes sank at the crease edges as he sucked in an exasperated gasp. I am, offended. So you should be. Despite our small bicker, this is a big occasion. Our first score on the list. So it is. Do you want to mark up another tomorrow? Depends on what you mean. I was thinking we could plant a sapling at our place. Sure, you got a sapling? Blossom. Well, let's do it tomorrow. Let's. Night, kitty boy. Night, Starboy. Chapter 7. Helpless Waltz. Helpless. Tom was helpless. As the few days had passed, he'd feel the sickness growing in his stomach. It started with the blossom tree. Todd was dressed up as usual, mint green sweater pulled over a black button-up, complemented nicely by his baby blue flower crown, and matching torn denim shorts. His jewelry was all gemstones. He tended to use gemstones to indicate his mood. They had different properties and brought into different things. Today, he'd selected emeralds. He claimed they brought good luck and good health, which was what their baby tree would need. Todd swung his legs back and forth from the low tree branch he sat upon. He brought a bubble wand to his mouth, forming a small flurry of watery bubbles. Tom had his hands closed tightly around the wooden handle of a shovel. A small ditch was being dug single-handedly by Tom, who was currently scowling at his neighbor. Aren't you going to hell? I will. I'm just observing nature. What have you observed? The clouds are like grain. A storm. Soon? Maybe. In less than an hour. Tom swiped his hand across his forehead, clearing it of the small beads of sweat only beginning to appear. Todd hopped off his perch on the tree, grasping a small peach pot with a tiny green plant poking out the dark soil. He transferred the sapling from the pot to the ditch, gently patting at the surrounding earth to support the foundation. Tom knelt down, admiring the small sprout that would soon be a full-flowering blossom tree. Todd reached out for Tom's hand, clutching his wrist, and softly pushed his outstretched hand into the dirt. Todd mimicked the movement and finally stood up. There, now people can know it's ours. People don't come here. Then the astronauts will know. I don't think their vision is that good. Lighten up already, Tom. Tom opened his mouth to protest, but was immediately shushed by the airborne finger being pushed up to his lips. The storm is coming. As if a jinx, a small raindrop bounced off Tom's cheek and landed on the plant. Then another droplet. Then another. After a minute, the drizzling shower turned into a heavy downpour. Tom glanced at Todd, who began to strip off his drenched mint sweater. The black button-up was clinging to his skin for dear life, accentuating the curves in his arms. Tom felt his stomach go utterly hollow as Todd held out his hand like a lifeline. The water had landed in multiple strands of his hair, threaded like tiny jewels. Todd's face was brighter than ever as he warmly beamed. "May I have this dance?" Tom accepted the hand. Todd roughly yanked Tom's hand, slamming their bodies together and linking their hands. Todd wrapped his arms around Tom's soaked neck. As Tom's hands found their way to Todd's thin hips, their feet glided across the uneven soil, trying their best to maneuver around the murky puddles. There was no music, but they didn't need it. Tom felt Todd's pounding heart press up against his chest. He hugged him closer as he dipped in playfully. Their faces were only inches away. Tom could detect the faint smell of bubblegum and cherries on Todd's lips. Todd slowly let his mouth curl into a smirk. "I never knew you were so fond of me, kitty boy." Tom felt a light blush tickle his cheeks. He immediately pulled Todd back upright and looked away. Todd leaned into Tom's ear, dropping his voice into a melodic whisper. "When I look into your eyes, it's like watching the night sky." Tom bowed his neck into the crook of Todd's neck. He continued the lyrics into a duet. "For a beautiful sunrise, well, there's so much they hold. And just like them old stars, I see you've come so far. To be right where you are, how old is your soul? Well, I won't give up on us. Even if the sky gets rough, I'm giving you all my love. I'm still looking up." The two boys continued like this for almost an hour, right through the storm. Tom was helpless, helplessly in love. Chapter 8. Anxious Fascinations. Tom laid on his bed, recollecting the night's memories. His soaking clothes had been hung over the window ledge, catching the air in the chilling October breeze. He and Todd had been dancing in the rain, together. Tom remembered Todd that night. The memory had been seared into his mind. The scattered like diamond rain decorating his golden brown locks. His heterochromic eyes were glazed and starry. He looked like a painting, a perfect character born from an artist's imagination, like a flawlessly cut gem. In Tom's eyes, he was beautiful. Tom smacked his head into the pillow, trying to rid his brain of the insane thought. Todd was his friend. Tom wasn't even gay. Well, he hadn't given the idea much thought. He'd been raised by his parents to be a standard kid, except the lack of appreciation, bonding time and communication they gave him. Tom had to confirm his feelings. He knew he loved something about him. His smile, his personality, his weird obsession with stars, his tendency to do what others would think would be impossible. How different he was compared to everyone else. It was exactly midnight. He slid open the window, shifting his damp clothing. He shoved his fingers into his mouth and let out a whistle. Todd stumbled over to his window, his choice of pajamas being underwear and a red hoodie that reached his knee. He met eyes with Tom, immediately feeling his face turn the same shade as his hoodie. He placed his elbow on the window ledge, his chin resting on his open palm. This was worth waking up for. "What?" Todd raised an eyebrow and pointed towards Tom's chest. Tom followed the direction of Todd's finger, only to realize he was utterly shirtless. He felt a rosy blush dust his cheeks, but Todd just laughed it off. "Hang on." Todd retrieved a bundle of dark blue, tossing it to Tom. Tom inspected it. It was the same hoodie as Todd's, just a different color. He pulled it over his head, fitting nicely. "That wasn't why I came here." "Such a shame." "I just wanted to see you." "You did?" "Yes." "Oh." Todd straightened his back and patted down his thighs. "Are your parents home, kitty boy?" "Nope. Business trip for 2 more days." "You should totally come around." "Sounds like a plan." Tom pulled on some fresh jeans as he jogged down the stairs to his front door. He was on Toad's doorstep in record time. Toad's house was somewhat desolate. The cracked white walls were surrounded by spirals of emerald ivy. The door swung open to reveal Toad, happily smiling. "Evening, kitty boy!" "Evening, Starboy!" Tom awkwardly stepped into Toad's house, struck with the sudden sweet aroma of rose petals and chocolate. Toad guided his neighbor to his room. Peachy pink walls decorated with grayscale Polaroid pictures, a fluffy stainless white carpet, white metal daybed covered in an assortment of pastel cushions. Most of the interior was pastel or white. Tom sat on the bouncy bed, hugging a lemon-yellow pillow to his chest. Toad held out a blue porcelain mug and tilted his head. "Hot chocolate?" Tom accepted it and delicately sipped. Toad spun on his toes and finally planted himself beside Tom. "What brings you here on this fine night?" "I don't know. I felt compelled to see you." "Let's blame the stars for aligning us such a fate." Tom sleepily blinked as he set the cup on a nearby white cabinet. Toad shimmied closer and let his head fall onto Tom's shoulder. Tom felt his stomach flip. Toad being so close made a million butterflies burst inside Tom. He knew it should feel wrong, but it felt so right. Was it wrong? Would everybody hate him? Would Toad leave him? Would his dad hurt him? Would he get bullied? A sudden wave of fear washed over Tom. His normal breathing took a turn for sharp, half-drawn pants. His head was spinning and throbbing with a needle-like ache. Tom clutched his head, falling his dampened hair into his calloused hands. He threw himself to the floor. Tom, are you okay?" Tom knew it was an anxiety attack, but that didn't stop him from feeling the walls were closing in. A strong pair of arms wrapped around Tom, pulling him into a hug. Toad pulled Tom into his lap, hugging his trembling body, and rubbing small circles into his back. He pushed the hair away from Tom's ear, a clear path for him to whisper words of encouragement. "It's okay, I'm here. I've got you." After almost 10 minutes, Tom settled. His breathing was shallow and his face was dripping in sweat. Toad had never left his side. It felt so right. Tom tightly shut his eyes before saying what would change his life. "I think I'm in love with you."